This time we're doing leather working. I know I promised this would be my next one last time, but you know how it goes. Things come up. In this case, it was me having a desperate need to do some blacksmithing. So I'll just open this up on the laptop so that I can get access to the chat and see when Sam inevitably turns up. Alright. So, today what we are doing, basically, is we've got to make a... Hey, Nope, how's it going? Geez, you were quick getting here. So today we're doing a calfskin pouch for this set of wooden crochet hooks that I made. And if we've got the time, because it does take longer, is this pocket-sized Viking sax that I forged with a hairy oak handle and brass pins. Is going to a good friend of mine in Germany who, ironically, just sent me a heap of leatherworking gear. And I already had quite a bit, as you can see, the collection here, but I had all of the really cheap versions of things. I had some good stuff, but he just generously, because he wanted to do something nice, sent me this package of all this leatherworking stuff. So I am sending him a hand-forged knife. Doesn't have an edge on it yet because I'm making this the sheath for it. I didn't want to cut myself, so it's completely just ready to have an edge put on it. But you know, it fits nicely in the hand, and it's kind of like a pocket knife version of a sax. So nice and sturdy, rough. It's no Sam Towns quality blade, but it's it should be nice for him. I'm also going to be, if I get to that, do the dyeing of the leather as well, so you'll actually get to see the dyeing. Hey, Aaron, it is bloody hot here today, so you may have noticed my cool little mirror system here, so you can actually see my face while I'm working, but also get a clear view of this, because you know, face for radio, this one, you can't miss out on that. But it is 36 degrees, and it's just gone 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's like 100 degrees, I suppose, in American speak. And I just can't be in my workshop. So instead, I'm upstairs, cowering under air conditioning. And I thought I would turn that into, make use of the time and get a nice leatherworking stream for you guys, the one that I promised. So I've got my little craft board here. I got some nice flat melamine underneath. I've got the items that I'm going to be making the pouches for, the sax knife and the crochet hooks. I have my calfskin here. I have, off the camera here, some nice kangaroo leather. Nice and thick, quite rigid, which makes really good knife sheaths. And I've got an example piece here of a sort of sheath in progress that I was working on, just so I can better explain concepts that I'm talking about. And I've got all of my leatherworking tools here. And you know, if you have any questions about what each of them does or anything, I'll try and do my best to explain as I go. But yeah, it should be fun. I've got my nice tape measure. This tape measure I actually won as part of a Stanley prize pack. Stanley, the company, were running a competition here in Australia to sort of, you submitted a photo of vintage Stanley tools that you have. And I have a bit of a fetish for old tools and reconditioning them and then using them, especially hand tools. And I've got Stanley planes and chisels and measuring implements and things like that. And my photo ended up winning the competition, and they sent me all of this modern Stanley gear, which was really nice. But part of it was this little 3-meter tape measure. And I don't know if any of you guys work with tools a lot, but every so often you get one that's just designed perfectly. It feels good to use. Like, it just gives you the fizz when you actually use it. And this tape measure does it for me. At first, I disregarded it because it doesn't have any sort of clip on the back. And but it's actually quite small. It has a nice weight to it, but it's quite small, so you can just slip it in your pocket. And it just feels, I don't know if you can, it communicates it just hearing it work, but it is so perfect in every way. It's all metric, of course, so they do make imperial versions, or standard, I think you guys call them. But it's the Stanley Sweetheart 175 years version. You will never find a better feeling tape measure to use. Just the right amount of resistance when it comes out. It's nice and easy to just sort of, pinch it and hold it. It's got a really great sort of standout length for something this small. The actual measuring tape is high quality. It's just machined to perfection, and I've sort of just been carrying it around everywhere. Of all of the tools that they sent me, I haven't really used them. This one though, everywhere I go, so that'll be being used possibly today. Sometimes you need a ruler. So I suppose we should get started. So the first thing we'll do is this calfskin for the crochet hook set. Really quite happy with how these turned out. This is actually Osage orange wood with the heartwood still in the grain. So it's got this beautiful contrast between orange and the white. And I don't crochet. My wife tried to show me once, and I'm just useless at it. So I didn't quite understand just how complicated the shape of the heads is, the actual where the crochet magic happens. But she was very patient with me as I tried to fabricate crochet hooks, and I've learned all of the why behind the different shapes in a crochet hook head. Now I'll use this bigger one to sort of give you a better example. It's various things like the rate at which this tapers is important. The ratio between this thickness and this thickness is important. The aggressiveness of the taper on the point, the gap in the middle of the tooth, this front ramping here as well. All of these are very important measurements, and it took me ages to work it out, but now I'm like the master of making crochet hooks. You have to do it by hand. I can't machine it. So I have to sit there with chainsaw files and slowly work it down and then hand sand it smooth, because it's got to be so smooth. If you're making it out of wood, wool catches on everything. So it has to be like glass. So I go up to 1200 grit hand sanding these to shape. But when I sell them in little pouches. I'll actually grab one that I have made before. So here are a couple of other sets. And you can this one's probably better contrast so you can see it. This is kind of what we're making. Nice little calfskin pouch. Little rivets in the corners. Nice little pop rivet here. Opens it up, and inside you have your set of crochet hooks. And contrasting color of it's nice, because there's sort of a special thing. If you crochet a lot, having a nice set of hooks, it's a special thing. So I figured when I sell them, I'll sell them with a little case as well, just so that they stay protected and stay special, But it's all hand tooled, hand stitched, and you'll get to see me do that. So I made 3 sets, and I've only made 2 pouches. So I have to make them to fit, because when I do crochet hooks, they're usually different sizes. They're handmade, so they're not really precise and repeatable sizes. So I have to make each pouch to fit. So I know it's not the most masculine thing in the world, but crochet is actually quite a cool little art form, and having a wife who does it regularly and sells products with it has given me quite an appreciation for the craft. So first thing to do is to try and find bits of calfskin that are big enough to actually accommodate what we're trying to do, and all in the same color as well. Now, because buying leather is very expensive, I actually have bags of offcuts, which is a really cheap way to get leather. But the only problem is, when you get offcuts, you're never quite sure if you're going to get big enough pieces. See, that'll be big enough for the front part. Because really what we're trying to do is, these are made of 2 parts. The back part is one continuous strip that goes around to form the flap, and then the front part is shorter. So if you look at that front part would fit in there. Just need to cut it out. Might even be able to get it, yeah, get it this way. Then you've already got some straight edges. The trick is getting one long enough to actually do the wraparound. I could do multiple part ones and stitch them together, but I don't know. I think that would look rough, and if you can make something look nicer, I'd say why not try? And since it is the morning here, you know it wouldn't be a Valhalla Ironworks stream if I didn't remind you that in the morning I drink coffee. So if you're feeling generous, help support me on coffee.com/Valhalla Ironworks. You know, I got to work that in creative and interesting ways. I actually had quite, a couple of people get me coffees, which has been really, really cool. Kenneth got me one recently. You guys have seen him hanging around the streams, and it's really helps. Anyway, let's have a look. I don't think we'll have much luck in here getting a really long one. I could actually take the time to keep a record of what size pieces of leather I have. That's a good candidate. But really, it's kind of fun just browsing around and seeing what's there. Not much in that one. I got a good candidate for a front piece, and this one here is actually a pretty good candidate for a back piece. If I sort of go like that, see that? The only thing is, if I need extra width, I won't get it because I've got this weird cutout here. Might work. I'm going to keep it in the maybe pile. They don't color match though, so I've got to keep looking. I'm going to be messy and just throw the ones that I'm not using on the floor. That's interesting. It's kind of like more suede than leather. See, this is tanned on one surface and soft on the back. This is actually soft on both sides, like a suede. That might be nice. Oh, it's two slightly different tones. Look at that. That's unfortunate. This seems like all suede, this remnants pack. That's pretty cool. Gotta do some cool stuff with that. I do a lot of leather jewelry as well. If you check out my Etsy link, you'll see it usually sells pretty quick, so I only usually have a couple of things on there, but I do hand-tooled leather, like wrist cuffs and things. They're all too small. These are pretty good. Last bag. Here's actually one that I started for this project, and it was going good until I realized that this piece here I hadn't cut wide enough. I'd gone across like the width of the crochet hooks, but this actually has to go up, over, and then down to create the void where the crochet hooks fit, and I hadn't cut it wide enough, but I'd already riveted in and stitched it. I was leatherworking tired. Never leatherwork tired, kids. However, I may be able to scavenge that back piece if I can find a matching front piece to fit. They're all too small. What we got here? Ooh, that's looking like a good candidate. If I can scavenge that back piece, yeah, I think that might do it. I think we got a winner. Always recycle if you can, guys. Creating a giant pile of leather scraps on the floor next to me. So what we'll do, here we are. To preserve as much width as possible, I'm going to cut this off. Nice and close to where the stitching is. There you go. Not much waste there. That can go on the scrap pile. Then we have a candidate for the back piece. Look at that. Nice. So what we do to create and cut some nice square sides, we get a nice little metal ruler here. You always need a square side to work from to use as a reference point. That's why these mats are great, because they've got these lines, grid reference lines on it. And so, we lay that out, put our ruler down, and line it up with the lines at the back. You maintain nice even pressure on the ruler. You get a nice sharp utility blade. Calfskin is tricky to cut. It doesn't like to go nice and neatly because it's so soft and supple. But you use the ruler as like a straight edge and you get yourself that offcut there. And on the other side, nice straight line. So I'm going to do that again on the other side and go as wide as I possibly can on this. So I line up our nice square reference side here with one of the lines, and I move up until I go as wide as can go, and then make a cut. And then we have a nice straight panel like this. We can use the reference lines here to now square up the end. Once again, with as little waste as possible. And then I'll leave the other end rough, but this is our far end. So now we got to prepare the front panel. Now this is a bit tricky because I kind of fit each one to the set of crochet hooks. So the first thing I need, just like on the backing piece, is a nice square reference line from which every other measurement will be taken. So I line it up on the grid. These mats are just invaluable for this. Even cheap, nasty ones, like my wife has a really nice self-healing one. This is just like a $3.50 one from Daiso. I'm not sure if you guys have Daiso shops in America. It's sort of like Japanese dollar store equivalent. Usually everything's about $3.50. About $3.50. Okay, so it's going to be interesting. These two leathers are the same tone, but one of them's been tanned differently. You can tell they're not the same batch. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but the backing piece is quite soft and supple. See how much movement I get on that? But if I try and do that on this one, it's much tougher. And you can see it's paler. So it's been tanned at a heavier rate, which means this is a tougher piece of leather than this. Shouldn't matter though. Can't see any reason why it would matter. Okay, so basically we want to cut this piece down a little bit just so it's more manageable, but we want to cut it as wide as is reasonable just because we don't want to have the same problem that I ran into last time where I have too short or too skinny a piece, I should say. So I'll line that up nice and wide, do a cut. Get rid of our offcut. Use this reference piece here to square off the end. So how have you guys been? You, from memory, you guys are both in America? You got that polar vortex knocking you around a bit? Yeah, I know that feeling. Life tends to get in the way. Best laid plans of mice and men. Well, that's good. I was watching them subscribe to Wrangler Star on YouTube, and it's been funny watching his videos because the first one about the winter storms was like him saying, "Oh, I don't think it'll be too bad. You know, here are the preps that I've been doing." The next one's like, this is looking a bit rough," and and then now it's sort of just like apocalyptic levels of snow and all the problems that he's had dealing with it. I mean, interesting to watch. Living in Australia, you know, it's kind of a very foreign concept to me. We've been getting, I'm not sure if it's been making world news or not, but north of where I live, there's a town called Townsville. Very boring name for a town, but the flooding that has been going on there has been absolutely catastrophic, and it's coming off the back of a very severe drought that they had for a very long time. So first, that's where all the cattle farmers are, up around there, and they had cattle dying, usually of starvation because they could not get enough food there because they can't grow anything because it was too dry and hot. And now they've got flooding that's so bad that it's the area that's now underwater is 2 times the size of one of our states called Tasmania. So twice the size of a state is underwater, literally underwater, like at least a foot deep, but some places entire houses are submerged. And hey Kenneth, how's it going? Thanks for the coffee, man. Very appreciative. So yeah, the Townsville floods has been making news here, but I'm not sure if they're actually making news in the international scene because it's been absolute devastation. And we've got flooding up north. Down south, there has been huge wildfires. Wildfires that are so intense that the smoke has actually been seen from New Zealand. So, you know, not sure what sort of geographical knowledge you've got, but that's a long way away. Yeah, the pictures are. Everyone's been doing the best that they can. There's even like farms that haven't been affected have been letting animals from other farms come to their paddocks and things like that. It's just to rescue them, and families have had their homes destroyed. It's terrible. It's really bad. But here in Brisbane, which is south of Townsville, it's we're getting, you know, when like a cyclone comes through, it comes with a lot of heat and humidity when you're near the edges of it. And Brisbane is just stuck in that edge of this gigantic sort of low pressure system that's causing the flooding in Townsville. It's been rough to watch. Okay, so we've cut out our front panel here, which is wide enough to accommodate the bend that we need to hold everything, because it's kind of going to sit like this. Oh no, Kenneth, this is actually leather for a set of wooden crochet hooks that I made. I've actually got a few of them. This is the sort of thing we're making. So this was another set that I did, and you can see the little pouch that comes with it to sort of protect them, but also it's a special sort of item, so it helps make it seem special. But I made 3 sets of these recently to go on my Etsy page, but only made 2 leather pouches for them because during making the third one, I stuffed it up quite badly and sort of rage quit. So I'm coming back to it. And once we're done with this, I'm actually, if we have time, I'm going to be sending this hand forged pocket sacks to a friend of mine in Germany who sent me a bunch of leather working gear. So I'm hand tooling a leather sheath using the tools he sent me, to go with this knife that I forged for him with a hairy oak handle, brass fittings. So that will be another part of and that one's not being made of calfskin. That's being made out of nice solid tanned kangaroo leather. Yeah, that's right. Instead of losing them one at a time, they'll lose them all at the same time. So we've got here basically the back and the front, and that will go like that. The next thing I need to do is actually stud the corners and stitch a line down there, a bit like what the stage that you saw me get to on the stuffed up one. But once I've got that, I can actually put the crochet hooks in there, bend this over, and work out where I need to stud it on the other side. Hey Bryant, how's it going? Yeah, kangaroo leather is awesome, and it makes the best knife strops on the planet, especially kangaroo tail leather. So, see how we go. Now, I apologize for headphone users, but punching studs in leather, I do it with a hammer. So, you might want to prepare for that. Also, if you do stick around and we get to the knife sheath, I'm going to be hand dyeing it. Hey Sam, how's it going? I'll show you a couple of other knives that I've got that are about to go up on Etsy that I did hand-tooled leather sheaths for, so you can see the kind of style that I'm going for. Oh, I'm at that age where I make sit-down noises. So here's one that I made that's sort of very roughly wet formed. I'm no Sam Towns when it comes to making my knives, but this is the knife that goes in there. It's specifically designed for sort of bushcraft. You got nice aggressive jimping on the back, but also this tail with jimping on it. So when you're holding it and you've got your thumb against there, you can tuck that tail into your hand and have a really tight grip while using it on carving. So with this sort of nice cooler bar burl handle, it's quite pretty. But I wasn't really happy with this sheath until I did some extra dyeing and things on it. It's got a nice little sort of pressure fit on it and brass fittings. It does actually have a pop stud in there that you can pop open, but it doesn't need it, to be honest. It's nice enough as it is with a little belt loop. But the style that we're going for with the sacks that's going to Germany is actually a style that I much prefer, which is flat sewn and actually rectangular. It's much wider. So this knife here I really like. You got a little press stud in there, and that part's been softened up. But this knife here is sort of a practical version of a cutthroat razor. Once again, doesn't have an edge on it yet because I've been working on the sheath. I've still got to put the edge on it. That's why it's not on Etsy just yet. And that burl handle scales really pop with the oil on there. I've got to still doing a couple of coats of oil. So same sort of design, good for fine bushcraft work. And this is the style of sheath with that. See that cutout that actually fits the handle scales, locking it into place? Very sturdy. And I really like the design of actually having the scales go down into the leather. So I'm going to be doing the same sort of thing with this one, even though it's a bit bigger, where it will actually match the curve of the scales, just because I think it looks cool. So that's the style that we're doing today. But this is the same kangaroo leather. You can see the effect that the dye has. It sort of gives it this worn vintage look, and I just think it looks so cool. Hand dyeing leather is awesome fun and kind of hypnotic, to be honest. So I hope you get to see it. Anyway, I won't bore you with that because we're going to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is get our hammer, our press rivets, and these things are really cool. They're only cheap, but you get different colors and things. Comes with its own little special anvil. It's sort of like a swage anvil. which is very handy to have, and various punches to actually create the fit. So what we're going to go for on this, I'm kind of leaning towards like an antique brass look on this. So I'll grab a couple of those. Rue leather, if you're in Australia, isn't actually that spendy at all. You can get a sheet of it that looks like this. That's a 3mm thick vegetable tanned. And you can get a sheet that's about A4 for maybe $22. That's if you're sort of buying through the normal retail chains. If you're actually trying to buy bulk, I imagine you can get it much cheaper. But it's a beautiful leather to work with. So cow leather is cheaper, but once again, depends who you get it from. Always depends who you get it from. It's super tough leather, super tough. I really love it. All right, so once again, headphone warning, because I'm about to make banging noises. Because leather work is banging. So first we're going to punch the hole. Kind of overkilled that one. Look at that, punched a hole right through the mat. That's great. I forgot that I was working with calfskin, not rue leather. Rue leather you really need to work the punch through, whereas calfskin, it's really soft. I'll remember that for next time. At least my punches are sharp, hey. That is right, Bryant. Click that like button and follow that link to buy me a coffee at coffee.com/Valhalla Ironworks. A few of you already have, which is awesome. It really makes my day, especially when I wake up to it. Like I check my phone first thing in the morning. It's like, hey, somebody thought what I was doing was so cool. They bought me a coffee. It's really nice. All right, so basically, if you haven't seen these before, the rivet is made up of two parts. I'm not even sure if the camera's going to show this up. There's this little T-shaped one, and you've got the lip around the outside. Let's see if I can line this up properly with the camera here. May not translate through because I'm using quite small ones, but what I'm basically doing is I feed the large piece through the holes that I made. And because it's got that lip, it can only go so far through the hole. And then I take my anvil with the swage, and I fit that over like that, put that down. Then I take this sort of, it looks like a washer, and that goes over the end. I take this die punch, which has like a little, I don't know if you can see that, fits down inside the rivet. That goes in the middle, and then I give it a couple of taps, and you've got yourself a peened, locked eye rivet. Nice and clean. See that? And it holds it really sturdily together. We're going to be stitching it as well. Okay. Got emails coming in. Yeah, it's the people from Coffee. They must have heard me talking about it. Okay, so we're going to punch a second hole at the top end here, and then we're going to punch stitching holes all the way down there and stitch it up so it's nice and solid. Making good progress, guys. You guys are good assistants. Alright, headphone warning. A little bit softer this time. And then we thread the rivet through. Pop the anvil on. Take our rivet top. Place it on top. Put the die down in. Give it a couple of love taps. And there you go. We have both ends of it done. And we've got this bit in the middle that we're going to stitch down. Alright, so we're going to be using what are called stitching chisels, which look like this. So basically it gives you a nice, even, consistent stitch, but it also punches holes in the leather so that you can feed the waxed thread or artificial sinew or whatever you're using, in this case waxed thread, through the holes, and it will be perfectly even. So you can kind of see here, the teeth line up perfectly with the stitches, and it gives you this beautiful line of stitching. Now normally when you're doing thicker leather that's tanned like kangaroo leather, it's quite aesthetically pleasing to scour a groove. And that's why I brought this one as well. This is from another sheath that I'm working on. But you can actually sort of dig out this groove and then put your stitching holes in the groove. And that way, if you were to look at it side on, the stitches don't raise up above the leather. They are actually flush with the leather. And it's a very attractive look. I did that on this sheath here. And you can sort of see that the stitching just blends in with the leather beautifully when you do that. On calfskin, you can't do that because it's so soft. Or at least you can't with the tools that I have. Anyway, these punches, stitching chisels, are some of the things that were sent to me by my friend in Germany. So Stefan, if you end up seeing this, thank you very much. So here's what we do. You want to make sure it's in a straight line. So I'm going to take my metal ruler, an essential tool for leather working. I'm going to place it so it lines up my two rivets. One there, one there. I'll use that as a straight edge as I chisel punch my stitching holes. So headphone warning again because the hammer's coming out. And then I can move this along and put the first tooth in the hole created by the last tooth last time. And that ensures a consistent and even stitching. There we go. Put that back. So now that we've actually got our holes punched, we can make a nice even stitch, which we will do now. I agree, nope, you definitely need to. Leather working is hypnotic and fun. It's a little bit expensive, I will admit. The tools are cheap, really cheap, but the actual leather is pricey. But the good thing is a market for it, because something made of leather tends to last forever, and so people do seek it out. So you want nice thick leather working needles. Thick ones then tend to bind up a lot in thick leather, but if you're doing calfskin, you want good sized nails. You can also use a tool like this, which I'm about to use, which will actually basically, see how it tapers down like this and gets thicker? You put this in your little hole that you've just punched, and you can actually sort of work this through and spin it, and it will widen the hole, making it easier to stitch. You do have to be careful because you can make the holes ugly, but basically just before you start stitching, just give it a run through, and it will help ensure that the needle goes through nice and easily, doesn't bind up, because you will snap needles if you're not careful. Sometimes the chisel won't go through totally as well. This tool just helps open that hole up. Like there. And this will just make the stitching process that much easier. I wasn't sure if leatherwork was going to be interesting enough for a live stream, but let me know, guys, what you think. If you're enjoying watching the process, or if you're learning anything, or... Almost done. Oh, there's another one that didn't quite take. There we go. Sam actually has one of my pouches in his house as we speak, because I sent his wife a set of my crochet hooks, and it came in one of the pouches that is this exact design. Thanks, Nope. Alright, now we get to stitch. Now I really like using yellow thread on this brown. I think that contrast is just great. It's really cool. So I'm going to be sticking with that. And the basic rule of thumb is, if you're going to be stitching this distance, you want to double it, and then you're pretty much going to have enough thread. I like to sort of go overboard because thread is cheap, and running out in the middle of a stitch is a pain. So what do we do? Another good reason to use leatherworking needles and not sewing needles for this, and a lot of the cheap kits come with sewing needles, is because the eyes are much bigger. Trying to fit wax thread through the eye of a sewing needle can be problematic. So what we're going to be doing is called a saddle stitch. So the way you do that is you feed it all the way through, so there's just a tail sticking out, and then you basically sort of in one hole and then around in the next hole, and create this zigzag all the way up, and then when you reach the end, you go back and zigzag all the way back, and that creates the saddle stitch. You can do this at the same time by having two needles and start the thread in the middle, so a needle out there and a needle out there, and then you can pass them through. Some people will do that if they have what's called a stitching dolly, which is kind of like a vice that holds it there, like it's got clamps that hold the leather like this, and then it keeps both hands free to be able to be like feed, feed, pull, feed, feed, pull, feed, feed, pull. What I like to do is, because I'm working without a dolly, is just zigzag one way, zigzag the other way, and just make sure I maintain tension as I go. Does that make sense? I do have a notebook with me to be able to draw diagrams if what I'm saying does not make sense. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Aaron. It's sort of like a set. It's like a matching set, really. It's like if you think about this knife that I was showing you earlier, the cutthroat razor knife. No other knife is going to fit in this sheath. That sheath is specifically designed to fit this knife and no other knife, and thus it makes it a matching set. And nothing beats the feel of real leather for a sheath, if you ask me. There's this big craze with the whole tactical movement of the Kydex sheaths, the sort of molded plastic ones. I don't get it. I don't like it. I love that feel, especially when you've got a real wood handle. I know most people use stabilized woods. I don't use stabilized woods on my smaller knives because, frankly, don't really need it. On a bigger knife, makes a lot of sense, but when you've got that just hand-sanded, oiled, natural wood feel, you want that hand-tooled, oiled leather feel for the sheath, man. It's hypnotic. And this will be available if anybody's interested. Just need to put the edge on it. Need to get off my butt. Actually, that is a very good point. I do professional blade sharpening, and there's quite interesting equipment about, because I do all of my sharpening with zero power tools. It's all done manually by hand. Is that something that you would be interested in seeing a live stream on? Let me know, because that can be arranged, especially since I have to put edges on 3 knives at the moment. Although I think I put one on this. Yeah, I put one on that one. That one's razor sharp. See how this is sort of creating, and it's opposite on the other side. So we got, yeah, and then we'll come back through the other way. Just like with my knife making, I've got a long way to go to keep up, to catch up with Sam. Sam's wet formed sheaths. He was showing me one for a hunter that he made, like a pocket hunter. So cool. Wet forming leather is awesome fun. Yeah, with my knife sharpening and even grinding edges on for smaller knives, at least grinding edges on, I use, it's called a TS Prof. It's, I would argue, the best manual knife sharpening system in the world. If you're looking at powered knife sharpening systems that you plug into the wall, I would say the Tormek grinding stone system is the best. But when it comes to ones that don't require any power whatsoever, the TS Prof from, I think it's from Russia or the Ukraine, is the best. And I saved and saved and saved for 18 months to get one. And I finally got one. Man, sending that much money to Russia, I was terrified. But it came. Turned up in about 2 weeks. Pristine, shiny. Oh man, sharpening is hypnotic. And for anybody that follows the whole ASMR movement, it gives that ASMR effect to my wife. She loves that of the knife on the whetstones. Tell you what, sewing can get pretty hypnotic. Usually I just sort of throw a Netflix marathon on and just go at it. But you guys are just as entertaining. you guys are my Downton Abbey. What sort of shows are you guys hooked on? I'm going back through and watching something a bit softer lately. I usually like more intense, dramatic shows, but I've been going back through and rewatching How I Met Your Mother. Great show, but man, they ended it badly. Alright. While you guys are telling me that, you'll see I've reached the end now, where there's my eyelet, that's my last stitch hole, comes out the back, and see how it ends here and goes through. Where it comes out, I can just loop it back and go straight back into that hole and pull it back and continue the saddle stitch all the way back down. Yeah, it's funny. I've got a TV and I haven't actually used it to watch TV in it'd be about 5 or 6 years. Ever since I discovered Netflix, I don't like ads. You know, I've got ad blockers and things on my computer for YouTube. I do a lot of YouTube watching, especially if Sam's on. Or Yamez. So yeah, I just sort of Netflix and chill. And it's funny, I'm not even much of a console gamer. I have a Wii U. And the Wii U's fun. Like, the only game I really like on it though is Guitar Hero. But 99.999% of the Wii U's use is as a Netflix machine. Well, at least you're paying for games, no, because I was a game developer for a long time, and piracy really does cut into the pockets. One of the benefit of using leatherworking needles and not sewing needles is the tips on leatherworking needles are actually blunt. Whereas sewing needles, it digs in. So when you're punching a hole, if you haven't quite got it right, lined up correctly, a sewing needle will punch a new hole or get caught up, whereas a leatherworking one, it can't catch. Very handy. See how neat that stitching becomes? All thanks to those stitching chisels. Man, I am hungry. I should have eaten before I started the stream. Have some cold sausages. I might have those. I had an idea for a restaurant a while back, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because I used to work an office job, and as anyone who's worked an office job or even like a construction job or site job will know that you start getting like this restaurant critic level of preferences and things of the different snack bars to go and get your lunch at in the local area. Like, there's the people that get really loyal to it, like, oh no, I always go to Subway, and then other people like, oh, I always go to this Chinese restaurant that's tucked away. Or sometimes, I don't know if it's a big thing over in America, but in Australia we have snack bars where you go there and you get like your chips and gravy, like a beef croquettes and fried cabana, and you know, it's awful greasy food. Anyway, I had an idea for the ultimate snack bar. It's purely a takeaway restaurant, but what you do, you go there, and there's a full kitchen there, cooking away, making all sorts of things, but they're not selling the food that they're cooking. They cook it, and then they refrigerate it, and you buy it the next day cold. So cold sausages, slices of cold pizza, cold bolognese, and they'd have microwaves there as well if you wanted to use them. But really, you're just buying it cold. Cold bacon, because the whole thing of like pizza is better the next day when it's cold. A lot of foods are. A lot of foods are better the next day cold. And anyway, this idea of mine for a restaurant wouldn't work because the Health and Safety Board would be all over that. But there you go, look at that. Stitched to perfection. So anyway, I got frustrated that this idea for a snack bar doesn't exist and should. So I decided to just recreate it myself. And I go to grocery stores and buy like packs of sausages and things, and I cook them and then wrap them in alfoil and put them in the fridge and eat them the next day. And it's so much better. Like, it's convenient. You just you want some bacon or some sausages or whatever, you just go to the fridge, you get what you want, you can sort of mix and match, and then you can eat it. No food prep or anything like that, because it's all been done in the past. Past you has taken care of it. So you probably see me eating some gross looking cold sausages at some point. Alright, so we're at the point where my last failed attempt went, but you'll notice this is much bigger now, even wider than the backing piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my crochet hooks in there, tuck them in, and then fold this over like so. Find where the fit is, take my hole punch and pop that in there like that. And I have a lined up hole which I can go to my, where is it? Here. My little pop rivets. I can grab. I'm going to need 2 brass ones on there. Drop the other one. They're so small. They're not easy to hold. And then we need the little eyes. I really need like a set of tweezers in my leatherworking gear. There we go. Put that back. And like a set of these with, like, you can see there's thousands of them in there. It's like $12. So this sort of thing for leatherworking is really cheap. And that comes with the anvil and the punches and things like that. So it's just the actual buying of leather that's expensive. Alright, so I pop the eye through, line it up with the top hole. Put the anvil on. Throw on the eye. Grab the set tool. And headphone warning, guys. There we go. And now basically we repeat the exact same process to grab the placement of the top rivet. So I'll put these in all the way in like they're going to sit. Keep it nice and tight. And headphone warning. we set the rivet, and we'll be good to stitch up the other side. Hammer. There we go. Now you can see there's overhang there, but we'll trim that off when we're done. I deliberately made this oversized so that I wouldn't run into the problem that I faced last time. Alright, now, my stomach is rumbling, so I'm going to quickly grab some food, and it's only going to take a second because of my awesome restaurant idea, and then I'll be back. In the meantime, you could buy me a coffee at coffee.com/Valhalla Ironworks and support what I do. Oh yeah. You ready to be grossed out, guys? Hey, see ya, Aaron. Thanks for popping by. Aaron gets to miss out on watching me eat cold sausages. Oh yeah. That's good stuff. I think it's an Australian thing. Oh man, when you're really hungry and you finally get something in your stomach, isn't that just the best feeling? It's that level of hot here today where you turn on the cold tap, and because the pipes are outside, the water's hot. Awful. Awful, awful, awful. Okay, so metal ruler lined up between the two rivets. Stitching chisel. And headphone warning because we got to do a few taps, a few love taps for this one. Alright, probably close this up. Having a Stanley knife bouncing around with this blade out while you're hammering is probably a very bad idea. Oh, some good stuff. Okay. What we're going to do now is grab our little hole widener and go through that process. Where are we? Bam. Okay. Now these holes, the alignment is more important because this is under pressure now. We want it to sit like this because the crochet hooks have to fit in there. But it wants to naturally flatten out, which causes a bow like this. So lining up the holes is going to be tricky on this one. It's just a natural part of it. So what you can do is kind of hold it in a way that puts pressure on the bowing there, and then use this tool to find that hole. Get text messages. It's my wife. She's saying that even though she's under air conditioning at the office, it's still hot. She can feel the heat. It's a bit the same here too. Like, I'm cowering behind aircon at the moment, and the building I'm in doesn't have insulation in the ceiling, so it's you can feel it like radiate down on top of you. Chatty. She actually wants to start live streaming herself, which I am very supportive of. I think it's a really good idea. She does a lot of crafty stuff, makes really cool stuff, like I do, except my stuff has like moving parts and things, the tools and stuff like that I make. She makes things like scarves and beanies and hairpins and really beautiful decorative stuff. She's got a real knack for it. But what she's been really wanting to live stream is like we were talking before about ASMR. Have you guys heard about ASMR? She's a big fan of it. Wants to start her own channel doing actual live ASMR and some pre-recorded ones as well. And she's got a really nice voice, so it's I think it'll do well for her. It's a passion of hers, and sharing your passion is always good. I mean, that's what I'm doing now with you guys. She says, "Hi, streamies." That's what you guys are, apparently. The streamies. I've really been enjoying doing the live streaming. I like getting to hang out with you guys and hear what's going on in your part of the world while I work. It's kind of like, having friends over. Almost done. There we go. All widened and ready. Grab our lello thread. There's an extra of it. Hopefully everyone's still there. You guys are usually chattier. But it is Tuesday. Or probably Monday, where a lot of you are. And that's never a fun day. Neither of them, frankly. Alright, so doing sewing in a way that where that alignment issue is happening, it makes it even more important to have a blunted needle for leather working, because you got to search for the hole at the ends where the rivets are. There's not that much of an issue, but when you start getting to the middle, far away from the rivets, it becomes a real issue. That's why it's even more important to widen up those holes. I recently sent some leatherworking tools to Sam. Well, I've got multiple ones, Kenneth. I prefer round ones, even though the stitching chisels are square. This widener that I use is totally round in profile. But see that aggressive taper, it's designed to open up holes. So it's quite gentle in that curve, so you can use it on a square chiseled hole. But they also have like scratch-alls, like this one here, or this one here. All of which are round. I've seen you can get square profile or triangular profile ones. I don't have any in my collection. I actually have fairly basic leatherworking tools, but it gets the job done. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with ASMR, it's a phenomenon that only some people get, where certain sounds, like maybe the crumpling of aluminium foil or paper, or maybe somebody making moist noises with their mouth, like, makes people get this sort of, it's hard to describe, it's like a sort of tingly feeling. I don't get it. So I'm doing a very bad job of describing it, I'm sure. But people who do get it find it very pleasant. It's almost like everyone gets that weird nails on the chalkboard feeling when you hear that sound. You know, someone scratching their nails down chalkboard. There is a positive version of that, basically. Instead of making you cringe, it makes you feel all fuzzy. And ASMR is that. I don't experience it. I don't get it. A lot of people do, and there's a huge community for it. But in order to actually record ASMR audio, you need a very special kind of microphone that simulates a thing called binaural audio. And I was all prepped to have a really cool build live stream on me building my wife a special binaural audio microphone setup. It basically simulates how human ears hear rather than a normal microphone. And she said, no, I'd rather really just buy a pre-made one. Like, I'll have to come up with something else to make. So, because you guys seem to really enjoy the electrical live streams. And thanks for all the supportive comments as well, by the way, on the videos showing the henna gun working. It was really cool hooking up the pressure-sensitive switch and actually having it respond and work. It was a nice feeling after the amount of work that went into designing and making it. And to have you guys share in that was really cool. It has encountered a issue that was unforeseen, that rather than being like a massive problem, it's turned into a really interesting challenge to fix. And I've already found the solution, and it means having to fabricate another thing, which is, frankly, just more enjoyment. The whole thing works fine. However, it uses a peristaltic pump, as you may remember. And peristaltic pumps actually have a thing called peristaltic pulsation. It's a phenomenon that happens with it. Because it's these rotors that spin around that push sections of the fluid through the pipe, it has this effect where it comes in starts. So where it's coming out the end, rather than being a smooth flow, it sort of goes pat, 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 if that makes sense. And I wasn't aware of this, but this is actually a known documented function, sort of side effect of using a peristaltic pump. And to alleviate it, you need to build what's called a pulse dampener. And it takes a chaotic stream of fluid that's all sort of messy, and it makes it a nice smooth flow coming out the other side. And the actual concept of how they work is quite straightforward, and almost always requires a pulse dampener to be fabricated specifically for the setup that you've got, because every different type of peristaltic pulsation is different. So you need to fabricate it. Now, they're really quite simple. Basically, it's a chamber, and in one side of the chamber you have your in-feed, and the in-feed enters and is funneled down so that the flow rate has to get slower to come out into this reservoir chamber. And on the other side of the reservoir chamber is another cone going down. So the henna will flow down into the cone, fill up the chamber, and then enter, the only way it can, the nozzle, the small nozzle of the output cone, and then the volume changes because the volume going in the small hole is smaller than the volume coming out the out hole. And because of that, it regulates the whole thing, and out the other side comes a nice smooth flow. So it's a very simple thing. It's literally just a cylinder with a funnel in one side and a funnel on the other side and a gap in the middle. So I've got to build one of those. The only trick is, because it's a henna gun and I'm working with 2mm tubing, this thing's going to be about that big. And I was thinking of live streaming the build of the pulsation dampener, but because it's so small, and I'm going to have to do the whole thing with like tweezers and such, I don't know how well it would pick up on a live stream camera. So who knows, maybe I'll try and do a normal video on it showing it, because it's going to be really fun. Like when the henna gun was all jolty and everything, I got this big grin on my face, and my wife was like, how can you be happy? Like, it's not working as you intended. And I'm like, yeah, but now I get to build more stuff. Like, the solution to the problem is simple. I just got to build this custom thing, and I'm trying to work out how I'm going to do it. And I think I've got a way to do it, because I've got a 3D printer. I'm thinking I should bring that out and use custom design and print a 3D part that does the job for me. So it could be cool. It could be very cool. But peristaltic pumps have been used for actually quite a long time, even since the 1800s, because they're a really good way to get water up high distances, because to get water upwards requires a lot of pressure if you are trying to suck it up or push it up. But peristaltic pump just layers in more and more water through a one-way valve, so it's just pushing the water up from below, and works a lot better. So they've been using them for a long time to get water up into buildings, but then people would turn their taps on and the water would come out like instead of one continuous. So pulsation dampeners have been around for a long time, and luckily I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just a simple fix. So the henna pen works, and it works great for distributing henna in a dosed, measured way. I just need to smooth the flow, and once that's done, that's it. Henna pen finished. One thing I am going to do is, do you guys remember the microcontroller that I used for it? It was a little square thing about this big. I use that because I've got plenty of them and they're very cheap. They're only a couple of bucks. But I am upgrading the microcontroller on it. And the reason I'm doing that is because in order to... You'll remember I had to fiddle with the sensitivity of the button to make it work properly. In order to do that currently, I have to plug the whole system into my computer and reprogram it. And ain't nobody got time for that. So what I'm going to do is actually put adjustment knobs on the control box, so in real time you can change how sensitive the pressure switch is, and also change how fast the motor spins based on the pressure. So you can adjust it and fine tune it. Or and you know, henna is a strange fluid. It responds to the temperature and the humidity in the air. So if you're on a hot, humid day, it will run thicker and require more energy to pump than on a cold, dry day. So giving her the ability to adjust the values in real time with little knobs will totally alleviate that problem and make the build more interesting as well. You know, it's just challenges. There's a solution to every challenge. And so I don't know whether I might live stream that. You guys might be interested in it. But it will mean that the entire thing is dynamically adjustable as it goes. So once that's done, rather than doing a leather pouch like you said, Kenneth, I'm going to be doing a little stand for it, kind of like a soldering iron has. You know, you put it in when you're not using it. So a little thing for the gun to sit in. And then I'm going to build a carry case for it. Make it kind of look, because it kind of looks steampunky, and I want the case to look steampunky as well. Maybe have the nice dark wood grain with the green velvet inside, like, you know, the old 6-shooters of the Wild West, like Wyatt Earp's pistol, and that had those little boxes, something like that. So, I mean, the whole reason I'm making this thing look all fancy is because henna is kind of like a performance art, and so part of that is the presentation. It's all about the presentation. If you can make something look better, why not make it look better? There's no rush in her needing it or anything, so the better I can make it before she starts using it, the cooler it will be when she does. You guys are very quiet today. I hope I'm not boring you with my nattering on about all various topics. Yosh. Well, as long as you're finding it interesting, Kenneth, I'm happy. And for anyone else listening, you too can be cool like Kenneth and buy me a coffee at coffee.com/Valhalla Ironworks. Because if you like what I'm doing, nothing says keep doing that like financially supporting me by buying me a coffee. Patreon's for the cool kids. You know, some people don't want to sign up to regular payments. Coffee is like a couple of bucks, one off, no sign-ups. It's cool. It's a good system, I like it. Alright, so we've almost finished this stitch. Now the astute of you may be wondering, but Alex, how do you finish off the stitching so it doesn't come undone? Well, I'm glad you asked, random citizen. It's pretty simple. We'll just cut off this excess here. And what we do is we take a dab of super glue. Just a dab, mind you. And let that soak in. Just the tiniest little amount of it is enough to secure the thread permanently. Like, it ain't going nowhere. And before this stream is over, you will probably see me superglue myself to myself. I am pretty bad when it comes to superglue diligence. So just let that air dry a little bit. It's looking good though. Looking neat, looking sharp. My little mirror system. It's not working great, but it's still good. What was it made for? Sticking yourself to yourself? Seems to be it. Am I to assume, Sam, that you too fall into that trap? That's good to know. Okay, so we can kind of trim up this excess a little bit. Part of my morning routine is to always check out my YouTube subscriptions. There are certain channels that I get really excited when I see a new video from. Sam is one, obviously. Yuri Tukman is one of my all-time favorite YouTubers. As you probably know if you follow him and have seen my henna gun at all. But this morning, one of my favorite YouTube channels had a new video out, and he really rarely posts, so because a lot of work goes into his videos. It's History Buffs. History Buffs channel is awesome. It's so much fun to watch, and he did one on the film Casino. Basically, he talks about the real history behind historical films, and Casino is about the mob rule of Las Vegas during the 70s and 80s, and it's a cool episode. That's interesting, Sam. I think most of us here use super glue as that sort of emergency wound sealant in the workshop, but I didn't realize that was the original use for it. That's kind of cool. That's actually very cool. Well, it's very efficient at doing it too. Okay, headphone users, hammer time. Rest in peace, headphone users. How is the banging on? How's it come across on the live stream? Is it deafening, or is it kind of? Does the phone microphone not really pick it up? Well, that's good to know. Okay, we'll sew up this bottom bit once we've done a little bit of hole widening. As lewd as that sounds. I try to keep it family friendly on this channel, but after all, I am Australian. Hey, Sam's gonna have a new video up. Like I said, one of my favorite channels. Is it on that awesome hammer you made? I'm in love with that hammer, it's awesome. Great profile on it. Okay, let's stitch up the bottom. Oh well. I'm sure there will be more. Alright. So the bottoms, there are clever ways you can actually map out your leather work to, when you've got a, let's see if I can explain this visually. When you have a curve here, but a flat here, so essentially when the top piece is larger in width than the bottom piece, you're going to get this curve. And as soon as you try and press the curve down, you get high spots. See that? There are ways you can overcome this in a beautiful, neat fashion, but frankly, you can also just pinch across the middle like that, and you get 2 little divots, and it's fine. It's good enough. Like, people aren't going to get that in the mail after buying it off me and be like, oh my god, I want a refund. It holds them nice and securely, it's functional, it does work. Yeah, pleating basically. And there's lots of different ways to achieve it, and I have done it on past things. I did a calfskin pouch for a cutthroat razor that I made for a local barber. And I pleated that properly and did it all nicely, and it came out well, but it's a lot of extra effort, frankly, for something that on crochet hook pouches does not need to exist. If you're using the crochet hook, you're not putting it in the sheath. It's just for storage. Just a nice way to do the storage, basically. So, not doing the extra steps. Another good thing about using the blunt leatherworking needles is that you don't constantly prick yourself, which I am wont to do, because I am a clumsy man. Sometimes you get yourself really badly too. It's awful. What's going on here? Come on, you mongrel. Yeah, no worries, Sam. Far be it from me to hold you up from work, because when you're working, you're making awesome stuff. And I do not want to stop you from doing that, so you enjoy yourself. Thanks, man. I look forward to seeing your video. I'll be hanging out for it, commenting a bit of bro love on it. And I highly recommend everybody else watching to check that out when it comes out. Based on Australian internet speeds, which are practically third world, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts uploading it now. It should be done by about March. I found out recently that Romania gets better internet speeds than Australia. Yeah, there's 2 routes you can, or 3 routes you can go with leatherworking. One is to use a thimble to protect yourself. 2 is to essentially bareback it like I'm doing and use blunted needles. Or another thing are these little mittens, which are adorable, and then literally slip over finger and thumb like that, and they're made of sheepskin. It gives you a little bit more dexterity and simulates the softness of skin that you don't get if you use a thimble. Being a blacksmith, however, my hands are they're pretty much just callous now, so I just bareback it. If I can use such a lewd parlance on this incredibly family-friendly show. And there we go, final stitch, locked in. How's that? So now, get our super glue, give it a dot. Try not to glue ourselves to ourselves. Try and probably fail miserably. I actually built this custom tray for my tools myself. It's got a lid that latches on to the side, and it just holds everything nice and neatly and keeps it relatively organized. I've got all my stamping punches down here, stitching chisels, super glues, skivers, everything that I could possibly need. You may notice I'm using this actual nailing hammer. You should really use a rubber mallet, something like this, when you're doing leather working, because it will protect your tools more. However, it does make you have to hit more, and I get impatient, and that is literally the only reason that I'm using a nailing hammer, albeit a small nailing hammer. I am not actually a giant. Well, I am a giant, but I'm not that giant, so giant that this is a full-size hammer. I am a big guy. People cross to the other side of the street when they see me coming. Okay, so now we got that. We can go 1, 2, 3. Put our crochet hooks in. There they are. Fold this over and see how that sort of lines up. Yeah, that's nice. That's real nice. So what I'm going to do is I kind of like adding a bit of rounding to these corners, make it a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to do some of that. Then we'll add some decorative stitching to the top. Also, the stitching isn't just decorative on these top parts here. This is quite soft and floppy, whereas you can see the part that's been stitched is a lot tougher. So, like I did on this one that I showed you earlier, I put this row of stitching on there because it sort of gives it a little bit of substance, a little bit of rigidity. And we'll be doing the same on here. So what I might actually do on this one might do angled cuts. And then we'll round out the corners a little bit. Our only downside to using calfskin over rigid leather like cow or kangaroo leather is, see there's edging here? That edge stripping, while you can burnish it to a certain extent, you can never burnish it to a level like I've got here. See on this sheet, see how shiny and nice that is? That's because it has been water burnished and it comes up shiny and really hard. Like it's really, I don't know if you can kind of hear how hard that is. And it really helps protect the leather and stops water from getting in the seams. So you can't really do that with calfskin as easily. But to be honest, you don't really need it for what the application I'm doing. But it's worth keeping in mind for anything you might be doing. So we're going to go back to stitching chisel and follow the line, basically go all the way around and back again. So headphone warning. Rue leather is fantastic. It's quite dry, not supple at all like you would get with cow leather. It's really tough stuff. I think it's just because it's an animal that's used to being in the desert, so it's like what you'd imagine camel leather to be like. So it's really, really responsive to tooling. You can carve it like it's wood, as if it's balsa wood. But as soon as you soak it, it becomes super, super soft. It's a little hard to get stamping to stick with it. You got to be a bit firmer than you might normally be. You'd normally have your test piece and you'd wet it and everything, and it has spring back in it more so than you would get from like cow leather. So you've got to be a little careful, not account for that. You got to make sure you do account for it. All right, headphone warning. Cool. All right, so this stitching process around the top here, much simpler because we're not going through two pieces that we have to line up. We're just going through one piece. Nice and easy. Should be done in a jiffy. And then we'll put the rivet on, and then we'll call it good. That'll be that done, and we can move on to the sheath. What are we doing for time here? 103 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun, guys. This might be a long stream. I'm enjoying myself. Alright, so let's get this party started. Shouldn't need to widen the holes on this one because it's kind of just one layer of calfskin. And it seems to be going fine. Nice sharp new chisels too, thanks to my friend Stefan in Germany. See how much faster it is when you're not having to line up a second set of holes? Whoops. One thing that I'm notoriously bad for is when I've got the long strands of waxed cord, doing getting it caught on things and looping it around stuff and then yanking it off the desk, and I'm just a clumsy guy. In it goes. So I've got a few upcoming projects that I was thinking of doing live streams for. I'd like to do another smithing stream. Had a lot of fun doing that one with you guys, but it's just been too hot. That day that I did it was the coolest day that it has been in a long time, which is why I sort of carpe diem'd and went out there and did it. But frankly, that stream was like 2.5 hours. I was towards the end of it just sweating buckets, and it was getting to the point where I was sweating so hard and the heat was so intense that I was starting to get lightheaded and just had to stop. But the worst of summer should break soon. Summer lasts a long time in Australia, but it should break soon and start cooling off. I can deal with a certain amount of heat in the forge, but that was too much. It's just has been too much. And carpentry, I'd like to live stream, but I need to actually. Yeah, thanks, Note. They're still available too. I've had a few people favorite them on Etsy, but they were a lot of fun to make. They're actually really practical. I was here in Australia, the state that I'm in is called Queensland, and there's a blacksmithing society here called QMAC, the Queensland Metal Artisans Collective, and every year they do a calendar, and the calendar has photos of various artisans' work, and mine was I was the cover girl, essentially, for the calendar this year, which was a huge honor for me. Like, I was really chuffed, and it was it was the biggest knife that I've ever made. It was made for a wedding that's actually coming up, if it hasn't happened already. The medieval theme, I think, and they're doing they wanted this giant like cleaver knife thing, look with all the forge scale and everything, to cut the wedding cake, and they got me to forge it for them, and I took a lot of glamour photos of the knife while I was making it, because it was quite an in-depth and long process to make such a large knife, especially since I do everything by hand and in a coal forge, so it's trying to make a beautiful piece by hand takes a long time. So they wanted to document the process of making it with photos, so that when they present this wedding knife to the bride and groom to cut the wedding cake with, they can actually see the process of it being made. And so I took photos of it, and when they asked for submissions for the QMAC calendar, mine was picked as the cover girl. And when I got my copy of the calendar, I didn't have any hooks, like command hooks, you know, the little things that you normally stick on the wall. And so I thought, I have some horseshoe nails, I'll quickly go and bash one out. And I did it cold, I didn't even heat the steel. But I thought it was only fitting that it would be a forged hook holding up the calendar about forging. But when I got the calendar, I found I'm actually in there multiple times. Like, we're on February page at the moment, and I'm Mr. February as well. as well, I think I'm in there 3 or 4 times, and I guess people like my work. In fact, the calendar's just here. I'll show you. So that's me on the top there, holding the blade as it was forged. You can see all the forge scale on it, and about 35 centimeters long. But that's my work. You can see my wristband is in there, my arm ring. But some beautiful work from some very talented smiths in there. So it's very pleasing to actually get a part of it. But you see, I'm Mr. February. That's a cutthroat razor that I was forging, and it's kind of nice to see it, you know, because that was a cutthroat razor commissioned for a local barber. What else am I? Yeah, there's my forge. You guys probably recognize that from the live stream. Sort of photography is a bit of a hobby of mine, has been for many years. Where else am I in here? If I'm anywhere else, I don't remember. Yeah, there you go. That's the same blade before I actually did any bevel work on it. That was just the basic shaping of it. So sitting there on the old anvil, a bit of branding down the bottom. So yeah, I was really chuffed to get that. in that opportunity to have my work displayed. It's quite a compliment. Yeah, almost done with the first round of this. Good to hear that Sam is off making things. He does such beautiful work. It's quite inspirational to somebody like me. And headed towards the big leagues with his ABS testing, and hopefully in 2021, I think. It's going to be really exciting. Hope he live streams a lot of the process. Almost at the end. You can see how much faster it is to stitch one layer of leather. There we go. So now we go back on ourselves to complete the saddle stitch. You can actually get, they're called a stitching awl, and it's for leather work, and it comes with like a little wooden handle. It looks a little bit like this, but it's got inside there a little spool that you can put your thread on, and you basically push it through the hole, loop some thread, and then pull it back through, and you push it, loop it, push it, loop it, and it makes the stitching sort of like an automated process. Been thinking of getting one of them, but haven't yet. I think it would be easier to use if you had a stitching dolly, and I do plan on building one. Might even live stream that, you know. But I'll tell you what I think the next live stream's going to be, and whether or not anyone's interested in it, I don't know. But my the hand crank blower that I have, yes, yeah, they're not that expensive, to be honest. It's just I don't know. I'm terrible at getting things for myself. But if you want to help sponsor me get some new toys to play with, you should totally get me a coffee on coffee.com/Valhalla Ironworks. Woo! Spared no expense with that sign, guys. Got out the Faber-Castells. You'll remember from my forging live stream that I use a old hand crank blower. They still make them to this day, but the one I've got is quite old, and it was in bad shape when I got it, reconditioned it and everything, but it's been a workhorse now for 4 years. And to be honest, it needs a tear down and clean out and re-oil and basically recondition the whole thing. So I was thinking of maybe live streaming, just sort of set the camera up like I've got it here, and just pull this thing to pieces, clean it all out, put new grease in there, maybe replace or fix bearings that are busted, get it just sort of working schmick again, you know. Because it's something that I rely on every time that I forge, but I don't look after it as well. I oil it every day. Like every time I'm going to be in there, before I even light the forge, I oil my blower. Which sounds a bit rude, doesn't it? But no, I take good care of it. It's old. It was clapped out when I got it, so I actually have plans to build myself a brand new blower out of actually out of wood, because like the heat doesn't go through it. And if you've got a good enough distance from the fire, then there's no risk of it catching on fire. Plus, you can like sugi on the outside casing of it and things. But there's a fantastic YouTuber called Matthias Wandel. He's a Canadian engineer who builds the most incredible things out of wood. But he actually makes a lot of things with wooden gears. And everyone was always like, how do you make such beautifully precise gears out of wood? And he'd actually made his own software that generates them. You have 3 blowers, jeez. I see some of those big buffalo ones and things, like the one that Roy Adams has on Christ-Centered Ironworks, and they're beautiful, and I'm so jealous. I should say envious. But I've just got a very simple one. But anyway, Matthias Wandel had software that he had coded himself that generates gears. And after being asked about his gears so often, he actually made a commercial version of the software. And I recently picked up a copy of it, and I'm going to build myself a gearbox that turns the hand crank into like massively faster geared up spin. Build my own air blower, like an impeller sort of thing, and have it be my new forge blower. You know, put bearings in, roller bearings and things in there to make it run nice and smoothly, and maybe even pop a flywheel into it. If I can like find an old one somewhere, or maybe build one by putting some weights in a wooden wheel. That would be a really cool project to do, I think. Oh man, the champion blowers are great. You saw how hard I had to work to actually get decent airflow in my forge. And it's not because the blower is particularly shitty. Well, it is. That's one reason. But it's also just, it does a really small volume of air. And everyone's always like, use a hairdryer or something like that. And I really don't want to use an electric blower. I find, I know it's working harder, but I don't like using, like, if I'm doing woodworking, sure, I'll use power tools, but when I'm blacksmithing, I like to do everything by hand, as you saw in that video, right down to like wire brushing. I do it all by hand, just because it's much more satisfying. There's also like, you can get belt grinders that put your bevels on your knives. I'm building a hand filing bevel jig, so that I can actually remove the power requirement for that process as well. I'll happily use power tools in every one of my crafts except blacksmithing. I always cringe every time I have to use something powered with it. I just like to keep it pure. So hand blowers is, well, that's right. No, it's it makes it special. It's sort of, it's the manly, gruff blacksmithing equivalent of how your mum used to say that she puts a teaspoon of love in her cookie recipe. Having something that was made purely by hand, including the air that was blown into the forge, all done by hand, it makes it a very, very special item. And it's, call me hippie-ish for saying so, but you can tell when you hold the item. You can feel the spirit that was put into that item, the love, the care, the craft. It's different. It will never look machine made. Hand-powered bench grinder. Yes, I actually have one. I picked one up. It needs reconditioning, but I picked one up at a flea market about 3 months ago, and I've got it downstairs, and it's so cool. Like, the gearing on it is incredible. I was even thinking of maybe turning that into a blower, but I don't think it would, the gearing would stand up to that kind of work. But yeah, I plan on reconditioning it, getting it back up to usable quality, and then putting it to work, basically, because they are really cool little bits of kit. I like going around flea markets and finding those old vintage tools that are in awful condition, and then you take it home and just take it apart and recondition it. And It's fun. It's really fun. Yeah, the stones to an extent can be reconditioned, but it's a lot of work. Mine takes I think it's an 8-inch stone, so commonly available, easy to find. What I would really love to get, because I love growing my own vegetables, and I found out recently that there's this old school machine that they've been using since like the 1800s, that you dry a cup of corn, like you pick the corn, air dry it, and then you feed it down into the top of this thing, and you turn the handle, and it pulls the corn cob through it while rotating it, and it strips off all of the kernels of corn, and then when it gets to the bottom, it's now an empty husk of the cob. It flips it around and then spits it back out a little channel, and it's all operated by a hand crank. I would love one of them. I would absolutely love one of those, because I love growing my own food, but stripping corn off the cob, it is a thankless task. Which is why if I'm growing it myself, I just eat it on the cob. But sometimes you want to cook with it. If you've grown it yourself, and it's impractical to go through and corn strip by hand. So I really want one of those devices, but to actually get one online they're like $180, and I cannot justify that at that point in my life. So I'm hoping to find one at one of those flea markets that I frequent. Even if I need to recondition it, fix it up, I'd do that. I think they called a corn sheller. No, I've never gotten to see one in person either. Just gluing down the sewing points. And there we go. Look at that, nice and neat. What I'll do now is here I'll put the top of a pop rivet, line it up with here, do the bottom of the pop rivet. That'll click in there, and we've got ourselves a full box bellows. Are you talking about the Japanese style one that has like looks like you're churning butter? Or sometimes they go this way. I've seen people make those, and they look sweet. Not sure what sort of air volume you'd get for the amount of work. Like being able to stand there and just slowly turn a crank seems preferable to me than going like this. But I know Japanese smiths usually had like an apprentice sitting there working them. But it's a cool concept. It's a really cool concept. Little leather flaps on there for controlling the airflow. It's awesome. Okay. What do we got here? All right. So we got here pop rivets. And we're going to stick with the brass. So you've got the top part here. You can see that. And then the bottom part, which is what snaps in there when it's locked closed. Now, since we're working with these, they have their own punch and anvil and set tool. So I don't get them confused. I'm going to pack away the ones for the other rivets. I'm going to take out these ones. Now this has a 2-part riveting system and a different anvil. A bit more complex. So we're going to put that there, put that there. So, better get the punch out. You thinking of maybe doing a video showing it, Kenneth, when you're done? I'd be keen to see that. Headphone warning, guys. Alright, so basically you've got, I don't know how clearly this is going to come up on the camera, but don't tell me we're freezing again. Come on, live stream. You can do it. You can make it. Come on. Australian internet, guys. Not even once. It's gonna come back. Come on. Hey, Kenneth, if I can expose my crude workmanship to the world, you can expose yours. Why is it freezing on me? Yeah, that's a good one, Kenneth. I don't know what's going on, to be honest. And my iPhone gets hot while I'm doing this. No idea why it's freezing. Yeah, I know it is. It's bloody third world. I get, and you'll probably scream in terror, you Americans, I get about 6 to 9 megabits per second at peak. Peak. That's my download. My upload is about 300 kilobits per second. So yeah. And that's in the city. The city. This might even just be the internet's way of telling me that I've been streaming for too long, because it's been 2 hours now. Maybe I'll start a second stream and call it my sheath making stream. So we'll try that, guys. I'll finish up this stream and then I'll do a second stream. I'll start that pretty much right away, doing the knife making stream. So